Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a truly fantastic game played between two French chess players. With the white piece is playing Detlev Birnbaum and his opponent is Eloi Relange. The game was played in 1995 at the 11th Cappelle Open. The strange thing is that 10 years later a similar game would be played between Kokolias Konstantinos and Sigalas Frangiskos, with a slight move order differences between moves from 1 to 4 and from 13 to 15. Quite possibly the second game is a copycat. And now, without further ado, let's get started with this dramatic game which was played in 1995. To Birnbaum's d4, Relange answered with d5, and soon we are going to see the Semi-Slav defense, c6. Knight f3, and black is choosing the Noteboom variation, which leads to very sharp positions and requires a huge theoretical knowledge. Here comes a4, white is making black's b5 move a little bit difficult, because black's idea is simple to save the pawn on c4. If black can achieve that goal, then white can face serious problems. That's why white is playing a4, but black keeps on chasing his dream. He's playing bishop b4, pinning the knight, and wants to go for b5. And after e3 there we have it b5, bishop d2, bishop b7. In here other popular alternative is a5, and I have to tell you that there is no way to save a pawn. You can't play a move like a6 and save a pawn, because relying on the vulnerability of the a file, white can easily win back the sacrificed pawn. And now if c takes b5, then b3. Yeah, if here, then bishop takes b5 can follow. That's why you should play knight f6, and white is winning back the sacrificed pawn. In our game, after bishop d2 we have bishop b7 and a takes b5. Bishop takes c3. Black is first removing the defender and only then is recapturing on b5, but this white pawn is just in time, and white is undermining black's pawn structure further. b3, a5, b takes c4, b4, bishop b2. Well, I have to tell you that this position can be also reached with a different move order. In here, instead of playing bishop b7, as I've already mentioned, other popular alternative is a5, which is actually more popular. And now if a takes b5, then bishop takes c3. If bishop takes c3, then c takes b5. If b3, then bishop b7. Of course, you can't play b4 because of this bishop takes b4 move, relying on the pin. That's why black is playing bishop b7. And then white is capturing on c4, b4, bishop b2. So by giving back the pawn in return, black managed to gain two dangerous passed pawns on the queen side, on which black will try to rely. After bishop b2 we have knight f6, bishop d3, knight bd7. In the game played in 2005, in here both players castled kingside and then knight bd7 was played, but in this game we first see knight bd7, and only after queen c2 both players castled kingside. Queen c7, e4 and e5. It's high time to undermine white's center, which looks very dangerous. c5, well, d5 is not good. In this case you are surrendering the c5 square, and after occupying the center, it's not really easy to proceed with the game. Also, by putting your pawns on the light squares, you are making your pawn on d3 very passive. By playing bishop a6, black can also put a useful pressure on c4, and after e5, if you move like d takes e5, then black has this knight g4 move. That's why to e5 we have c5. White is opening up the light squared bishop's diagonal, and in some cases can even create some c6 threat, although it's too early for it. It takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight g4. Black is fighting for e5 square, bishop b5, knight to the e5, after which we see the exchange of knights on e5 and f4. White will now organize a counterplay on the king side, knight c6, bishop b2, bishop a6. Black wants to get rid of this light squared bishop, otherwise With bishop a4, white can successfully neutralize the advance of these passed pawns. Bishop takes a6, rook takes a6, queen e2, both attacking the rook on a6. Also, white can play queen g4, queen a7, and rook f2. By blocking the g2 a7 diagonal, white is not allowing black to capture on c5 with a check, because in this case black can lose the rook a4. But in return, black is starting to make use of his passed pawns, and all this looks very scary. Queen g4 with a direct mating threat, and f5. Black is opening up the 7th rank for the queen and is doubling white pawns. He takes f5, a3, bishop e5, b3. Well, it was better to capture on e5 and then win the pawn on c5. If f6, then rook a7. But in our game after bishop e5 we have b3. Black pawns are hurrying towards the first rank. f6, and there comes b2. Now if you capture on g7, then black can go for a pawn promotion with a check. That's why white played rook d1, and only now we have knight takes e5, f takes e5, queen f7. Other alternative is king h8. In here it's not good to play a2 because white has this f takes g7, and if queen takes g7, then after rook takes f8, king takes f8. White has this queen c8 check, and black king is in a mating net. Yeah, there is no way out. White is winning. That's why after f takes e5 we have queen f7, and now if you play f takes g7, then this can be met with queen takes f2 check followed by a checkmate. That's why to queen f7 white answered with queen e2 and queen b3. Well, now if queen takes a6, then black can capture on d1, but it was better to protect the rook by playing queen e6 and also keep the pawn on e5 blocked. But instead we have queen b3, and the problem with this move is that by playing f7 check, white could easily equalize the game. Of course, rook takes f7 is not good. There is a back rank weakness. That's why black should play king h8, after which white should play rook f1, strengthening the first rank and threatening to capture on a6. Now if queen e6, then rook d8 can follow. Let's take a look at this forced line. Black is losing his queen, but in return is managing to make use of his passed pawns. Yeah, and in this case already all white can do is to give a perpetual check. But in our game after queen b3 we have rook f1, and in here by playing rook a8 black could actually win the game. Black is first moving away his rook, is strengthening the 8th rank, and already queen g4 can be met with rook f7. Instead, after rook f1 black hurried with a2 and stepped into f7 check. If rook takes f7, then rook d8 check. That's why black played king h8, and there comes queen takes a6. So black sacrificed his rook and in return managed to go for a pawn promotion, but this line favors white. Here comes queen d6 with a direct mating threat, queen b8 and e6. A mistake by white which is allowing black to equalize the game. But at this point finding the best move is very difficult. It turns out that the winning move is king h1, a very important prophylactic move. Later in some lines when playing c6, white is not allowing black to announce a check from b6. For example, now if you play a move like queen b3, then after c6 you no longer can announce a check from b6. By the way, I have to tell you that instead of playing queen b3, if you play a move like a1 queen, in here if you go for a pawn promotion, then you can step into rook takes b1. If queen takes b1, then queen takes f8 can follow, and then rook takes b1. It's white who is winning. But in our game after queen b8 we have e6, and black went for the exchange of queens on d6, after which the second pawn got promoted to a queen. But in return white has passed pawns on the 7th rank, guys, and it's not so easy for black. e7. Of course, capturing on b1 won't give you much. Black can play queen d4 check, and then king capture on d6. This is equal, that's why white proceeded with his pawn push. e7, queen b6 check, king h1, queen a8. The most accurate defense by first announcing a check from b6. Black is moving away his queen, his first queen from the dangerous first rank, and then is neutralizing the mating threat. Now, of course, capturing on f8 is not good. Black can win the game. In this case, black can realize his advantage. Black can go for a pawn push, can weaken white's king side, and with two queens can start harassing white king. That's why to queen a8 white answered with d7. A precise move, and we have a fantastic position, guys. Look at this. Black has two queens against white rook, but don't forget that white has three passed pawns on the 7th rank. This is insane, guys. And now white's idea is simple: to capture on f8 and then go for pawn promotions, thus winning the game. But black was not sleeping, and in return black found a brilliant defensive resource: queen takes g2 check, the only move which saves black's position. After king takes g2, black played queen g6 check, and then after queen e4 check, the players agreed to a draw. Black is just giving a perpetual check, and this is a draw. This is just a wild game, you know, guys. There are three passed pawns on the 7th rank, but with a queen sacrifice, black managed to expose white king, and with the remaining queen announced the perpetual check. Hope that you enjoyed this marvelous game, and feel free to share it with your friends as well. In the end, the chess puzzle for you, where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white's move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care.